And I can really only think of one reason why this is nice to do, and then a lot of reasons why it's not nice to do. Welcome back, travel fans. I'm Morgan from the very unofficial Travel Guys, and on this week's edition of Sunday Sofa Time, I'm going to tell you 5 mistakes to avoid on your cruise. That was so aggressive, wasn't it? Avoid on your cruise! Like I'm a professional wrestler now or something. As I mentioned, I wanted to give you a list of 5 mistakes to avoid on your cruise. So for everybody who's new here, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. Before you leave, consider subscribing. There, now I've done my YouTube duty. I have now been on 15 different cruises, and I have a wide network of friends and acquaintances and online connections that provide me with a lot of knowledge and discussions about cruising. And there have been so many videos made about this subject. And yeah, I just thought I would make one too because, well, why not? And especially the final 2 tips that I want to give you, they are things that are very like personal to me. Like, I don't know if I've heard a lot of other people talk about these things, but they are things that I definitely do or avoid doing on all my cruises. However, the first one is probably one you're going to hear on everybody's list, and that is don't fly to your port on the day of the cruise. Don't fly to the port on the day of the cruise. If there's any way you can avoid it, fly the day before and stay in a hotel that night so you can be absolutely sure that you will make it to the cruise. If you are not on the ship when the ship leaves the first port, it could be very difficult and also very expensive to participate in that cruise at all. And so unless you are close enough to the port that, like, if everything went wrong, you could still, get in a car and drive there before the ship leaves, which sounds like a crazy adventure and would give you fun stories to tell. Do yourself a favor and do not fly to the port on the day of the cruise, especially if your cruise is leaving from a different country than you're in right now. Do any of you out there have a horror story about flying to the port on the day of the cruise that you want to share? If you do, please write it in the comments below. The second thing I want to tell you is one that maybe is on quite a few other lists, and that is don't pack so much. This is actually something I have to remind myself very often. I tend to overpack, and I know that there are other of you out there that are just like me, people who, I guess I just need options. You know what I mean? Like, if I just let me say it like this. I can't decide now what I want to wear every day for the next week. I can't do it. So that's why I always tend to bring too many clothes or too much clothes, because I never know what mood I'm gonna be in, what the weather's gonna be like, what I'm gonna wanna wear. But then, so I always put way too much in my suitcase, and then you know what happens? I end up wearing the same 3 or 4 things the whole time, and like 3/4 of the stuff that's in my suitcase never even gets touched. I wear the same shorts almost every day, my favorite pair of shorts. And then I have 2 pairs of pants that I alternate wearing at night when it's time to dress up and get fancy. The one thing that I do take a lot of that I tend to use all of, however, are shoes. So you've got walking around shoes that look kind of nice and aren't tennis shoes. And then you've got tennis shoes. And then you've got really nice shoes for dressing up. Fancy. And then you also have water shoes, which you definitely should remember to bring with you when you go to the beach so you don't slice open your foot and have to get stitches like I did on the Harmony of the Seas. So yeah, shoes are something I bring a lot of that I use everything of. Clothes are things I bring a lot of that I usually don't use most of. And one thing, Marcus does this a lot. Marcus will purposely bring not enough clothes so that he's forced to buy new clothes, because I think both Marcus and I, we're just not people who go clothes shopping, partially because we never have the time, but also because, I don't know, it's not something I particularly enjoy. And so Marcus will always purposefully bring too few clothes, so he's forced to motivate himself to go out and buy new things. And then, the fun thing about that is then it's like, the shirt that you bought or the jeans that you bought or the belt or whatever, you think, oh, that's my Bahamas belt, or oh, that's my, Florida shirt. You guys do that too, right? So yeah, just try to not take too many clothes, because, and I know I'm not the only person who's ever said this, after you're done packing, take half of the stuff out and you'll still be fine. All right, now we're moving into a territory where there's the next three things. They're all things that I don't know if everybody says this on their lists. And like I said, definitely the last two. But the next one I wanted to tell you is to check your onboard account every day. The reason I think this is important is because it's really easy to spend money while you're on the ship, because you're never dealing with cash. It's like going to Disney. At Disney, you get Disney in Florida, you get your magic band, and you just tap that everywhere and rack up all these charges. And on a cruise ship, you also can get bands or like medallions, depending on what cruise line you're going to be cruising with. Or you can, or most of the time, you always have your card. The card you use to get into the cabin also becomes like your credit card on board. So in addition to the onboard gratuity or whatever it's called on the different ships that's automatically added to your account every day, there's going to be charges showing up in your account for the drinks you had, for the, if you went to the specialty restaurants, if you've, anything that you've purchased on board or through the ship will show up in your onboard account. And there's two reasons why I think it's important to check it every day. One of them is because, sometimes mistakes are made. It can happen. Things can get charged twice, or, maybe something is supposed to be on sale and you get charged full price. I don't need to go through all the things and the reasons that mistakes can be made, but it's so much better to try to resolve it before the last night of your cruise. And that is a huge mistake that a lot of people make, is they wait until that slip shows up under their door on the last night of the cruise. They go through it all, they see something that needs to be remedied or explained, and then there is a gigantic line of people waiting down at guest relations, and you just don't want to do that to yourself. So check your onboard account every day. You usually can do it right over your television, or if most of the ships now also have their apps, and then you can look in the app. And then, if you see that something is not right, then go and get it remedied soon and not on the last night. So those are kind of the two reasons all together. One is just to make sure that you're not spending too much money and going over your budget. And the other one is because if there is a mistake, you need to get it, or I suggest you get it remedied quickly and not on the last night. Okay, moving on to the final two, and like I said, these two are things that I specifically always do, and I don't know if I've seen them on other lists or not on very many other lists. But before I get to those, I'm going to please the gods of Google and put a little ad right here. Did you see an ad? Was it for a cruise ship? Wouldn't it be nice if you have to watch ads, that at least it's like, always something that's really interesting to you? I guess that's the way it's supposed to work, isn't it? But that's through all the spying and things like that, so never mind. Okay, here is a mistake that I have made one too many times, and that is why I don't do it anymore, and I know not to do it anymore, and that is, don't get wasted on the final night of the cruise. Oh yes. What a mistake. And I've seen other people make this mistake as well. And the thing is, the final day of the cruise, like that final morning, it's already sucky and stressful enough. So why make it worse by drinking so much the night before that you feel like absolute and then you're in a bad mood, maybe puking everywhere. Not that I've ever puked everywhere on the last day of a cruise, but I have. So try to do all the wild and crazy things before the final night of the cruise. And then my suggestion is, if you're gonna do one of the like more upscale specialty restaurants, save that for the last night of your cruise, because it still feels like you're doing something really special. And if you make a late reservation time, then maybe it will help you avoid temptation. You know what I mean? Go to the early show and then get a late reservation in a specialty restaurant, and then after that, just go to bed. There is a baby having a breakdown in the hallway. Can you hear that? That's okay. That's what babies do. Okay, the final mistake that I really don't want you, my friends here, to make is this. You don't have to give up your suitcases on the last night. Mind blown, right? You don't have to. If you've never been on a cruise, then you have no idea what I'm talking about. So let me explain it to you for all of those who don't know what I'm talking about. There is a thing that most cruise lines do. In fact, I can't think of any cruise line that I have been on that doesn't do it. And that's like an assisted debarkation. That means debarking the ship is how you get off of the ship on the final day. So you will get information into your cabin on the last day or the second to last day of the cruise with a color-coded band that you're supposed to put on your suitcase, as well as a time slot. And what you're supposed to do, or what they suggest you do, let's say it that way, what they suggest you do is pack up all your things into your suitcase before you go to bed on the final night, and then leave your suitcase outside your cabin door in the hallway. Then the next morning when you wake up, the magical, elves have taken all the suitcases and already brought them off the ship, and they're waiting in like the exit hall on land. And I can really only think of one reason why this is nice to do, and then a lot of reasons why it's not nice to do. The only reason that I can think of that it's nice to do that is because then you don't have to carry your suitcase, you don't have to roll it off the ship with you. But to me, that's really not a big deal. And as I mentioned way back at the beginning of this video, I have a hard time picking out now what I want to wear next week, or even now what I want to wear tomorrow. And then you don't know if it's gonna rain or be too hot. And so I just like having all my stuff with me at all times. And also, I feel like it adds a little bit more stress to the end of the cruise if I know I definitely have to have everything sorted out, everything decided, everything packed and repacked before, the final night of the cruise. I don't get that. So here are all the reasons why. Well, I've already talked about some of the reasons why I prefer not to do that. And I think a lot of people don't realize that you don't have to do that. Wait, another disadvantage that all sort of filters into this about doing the assisted debarkation is then I feel like you're pressured to leave the ship at a certain time. And it's usually really fucking early. We're talking sometimes at like 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning on the last day of the cruise. And there's reasons why it has to be like that. They need to clear out the ship so they can turn it all over because 4,000 guests are getting back on in a couple hours. So I completely understand that. I understand why everybody should be out of their cabins really early. However, you don't have to leave the ship at 7:30 in the morning. I know, shocker, but you don't. So Marcus and I always like to keep our bags with us, and then the next morning we get up just like normal. We pick out what clothes we want to wear just like normal. We go up and have breakfast just like you get it. And then we come back down, and if we realize, oh, it looks like it's gonna rain, or oh, it's actually much warmer out than we thought, then we can, change our clothes, and then we do try to leave our cabin before like 9 o'clock. But then, we take our stuff up, maybe to the pool deck and sit around the pool for a couple more hours. Maybe we'll stay in bed a little bit longer and then get ready and then leave the cabin and then go to the pool for like an hour or something and then go have like brunch before we leave. I have never been kicked off a ship. And I know from talking to a lot of you that some of you stay on the ship until like 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And I mean, if you've got a late flight, what else are you gonna do? I know there's a lot of other things to do, but it sounded good. I know cruise lines are probably gonna be mad at me for saying this, but you do not have to leave the ship basically until they're getting ready to, leave again that evening. I don't know if there's any like written rule that you need to leave the ship at a certain point. And I would love to know if you guys know if there is. And I would also love to know what is like the latest that you've stayed on board after your cruise was finished. And those are my 5 tips. And now comes the time on Sunday Sofa Time where I comment on your comments live on air. In last week's Sunday Sofa Time, I talked about 5 things I loved about the Disney's Pop Century Resort in Orlando, Florida, and I would love to be there right now, I can tell you that. Anyways, these comments are about that video, and the first one I wanted to talk about is from Kelly Leach. Kelly writes, I just got back from Disney, and I was on the bus back to our resort at night, and what you mentioned happened. I was looking up, and I was blinded by the light. Blinded by the light. I'm sorry. That always happens to me. Yeah, that is a real thing. And that's one of the things that I mentioned that I prefer about the Pop Century as opposed to the moderate or luxury resorts is you only have one bus stop and then that only happens one time at the end of the night and not like 3 or 4 or sometimes 5 times like when you're staying at the other kind of the resorts. Cine Strawwing writes, I must be the only one on the planet who hates the refurb at Pop. It screams IKEA dorm room to me. I was booked there for a solo trip last month on a steep discount, but ended up moving my reservation to French Quarter, and I'm really glad I did. I hate buses, and I always want some kind of alternative, but when I did take them, French Quarter was always the first stop back from the park. You say they have one stop, but I noticed how much further Pop and Art of Animation guests had to walk to get to their stops. That's ugly at the end of a long day of walking. Still and all, call me spoiled, but it's deluxe for us or bust. I wouldn't call you spoiled, but I'm very happy for you that you have the travel budget to stay in the deluxe resorts. And I can definitely understand why you would prefer that over the Pop Century. Final comment is from Tracy Hess. Tracy writes, Pop is our favorite Disney resort. I actually like the silliest thing, the queue for the buses. I prefer proper queuing rather than the mini multiple stops at moderate resorts that end up with mini mobs of people scrambling to get to the bus door first. Hallelujah, Tracy. Great minds think alike. I know exactly what you mean. Thanks for spending this part of your day with me, if it is today on Sunday or another day of the week. I'm glad you were here, and I look forward to sitting in front of the red sofa again next week to bring you some more fun travel-related stuff. See you then.